come on. Do you know what happens if you inherit a retirement account and don't touch it for a decade? This is one of the most expensive mistakes an heir can make. The rules changed. Most people now have just 10 years to empty that IRA, and the ones who wait until year 10 to finally act. They send the IRS a fortune they never had to pay. 40% of heirs don't even know the clock is ticking. I don't want that to be you. So here is the 10-year trap and exactly how to sidestep it. For decades, if you inherited your parents' retirement account, you could stretch those tax benefits over your entire lifetime. That all ended when the Secure Act kicked in. Now, a decision you put off until year 9 could accidentally donate half your inheritance to the government. And most people never see it coming. Let me show you exactly how the clock works and why the quietest tax trap in America is about to affect millions for over 40 years. Inheriting a retirement account came with a quiet superpower, the stretch provision. If your parents left you their IRA, you could spread withdrawals across your entire life expectancy. A 30-year-old heir could pull just a small fraction each year, keep the rest compounding tax-deferred for decades, and hand the remainder to their own kids. It was the ultimate generational wealth builder. Then, on January 1st, 2020, the Secure Act erased that playbook for almost everyone. Now, if you are not a spouse, not disabled, not a minor child, which means you, the adult child, inheriting your mom or dad's nest egg, you have exactly 10 years. Not life. 10 years. And here's the part nobody explains at the funeral. During those 10 years, you are not free to do nothing. If the original account owner died after their required beginning date, you must take money out every single year based on your life expectancy in years 1 through 9. The entire balance, every remaining dollar, has to be gone by December 31st of year 10. So, picture this. You are 52. Your father passes at 78 and leaves you his $400,000 IRA. You are grieving, you are busy, so you decide to let it ride until year 10 to maximize tax-deferred growth. The balance climbs to $600,000. Then you cash it out all at once. That single withdrawal lands on top of your salary, immediately pushing you from the 24% bracket to 37%. Over $200,000 vanishes to the IRS in one tax season, a self-inflicted wound that didn't have to happen. But even that disaster is avoidable. The deeper trap that caught thousands of heirs in 2024 was far sneakier, the annual distribution requirement itself. For nearly 3 years, even financial advisors argued about whether yearly withdrawals were necessary. The IRS stayed silent while beneficiaries skipped payments. Then the final regulations dropped, and the silence turned into a ticking clock. If you missed those mandatory annual withdrawals, the government didn't just ask for the tax. They demanded a separate penalty, a 25% excise tax on every dollar you failed to pull when you should have. The trap wasn't waiting until year 10. It was misunderstanding years 1, 2, and 3. And suddenly, 500,000 Americans were looking at surprise bills they couldn't undo. Here is how the penalty actually works. The IRS calls it an excise tax, not a standard late fee, because missing a required minimum distribution from an inherited IRA is treated like a failure to withdraw your own money correctly. The default penalty is 25% of whatever you should have taken, but didn't. So if your required annual withdrawal was $20,000 and you missed it, you owe the government $5,000, separate from any income tax on the distribution. And that penalty compounds each year you remain non-compliant. Miss 3 years in a row, and you are not just playing catch-up. You are writing a check directly to the Treasury that could have gone to your retirement. Let's put a real number on this. Suppose you inherit a $500,000 IRA from your mother at age 55. Because she passed after her required beginning date, the rules say you must take yearly distributions based on your life expectancy for years 1 through 9, with the remainder cleared by December 31st of year 10. Your first RMD might be around $18,000. At a 24% federal rate, that's a tax bill of roughly $4,300. Manageable. But you are grieving. You are busy. The paperwork sits in a drawer. You skip year 1, then year 2, By year 3, your missed RMDs total may be $60,000. The 25% penalty alone? $15,000. And you still owe income tax on the entire $60,000 when you finally withdraw it. The delay didn't save you money. It manufactured a new debt you never budgeted for. Now here is where the story flips. For nearly 3 years after the Secure Act passed, even the IRS didn't clarify whether annual RMDs were required within the 10-year window. Conflicting interpretations flew between tax professionals, and millions of beneficiaries did nothing because they reasonably believed they could wait until year 10. The regulator eventually blinked. The IRS issued Notice 2022-53, waiving penalties for inherited IRA beneficiaries who missed RMDs in 2021, 2022, and 2023. For a brief moment, the trapdoor had a safety net, but that net vanished on January 1st, 2025. If you missed an RMD last year, or you miss one this year, the penalty is fully enforceable again. That grace period wasn't permanent forgiveness, it was a loud warning shot, and most people slept through it. The result is that we're heading into a slow-motion tax disaster. More than $16 trillion currently sit in American IRAs. An estimated $100 trillion will flow to heirs over the next 2 decades as part of the Great Wealth Transfer. The vast majority of those inheritors are adult children who will face the 10-year rule. Yet surveys consistently show that over 40% of beneficiaries have no idea the rules changed, and among those who do, fewer than 1 in 5 have a withdrawal strategy beyond wait and see. That's not a blind spot, it's a financial fault line. And that brings us to the most dangerous assumption of all, that waiting until year 10 to cash out is a smart tax deferral move. In some cases, it's the opposite. Without a plan, a single lump sum withdrawal can launch you into the highest tax bracket, trigger Medicare's surcharges, and phase out deductions you've relied on for decades. But the real pivot isn't about speed, it's about timing. Because if you understand how to play what I call the bracket game, you can turn the 10-year countdown from a liability into a perfectly legal tax shelter. The difference between a thoughtful 5-year distribution and a panicked year 10 fire sale can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the IRS will collect every cent if you don't learn the rules they're not required to teach you. So, let's break down the exact math and the 2 different paths you can take, starting with the bracket game's first rule. The bracket game is exactly what it sounds like. Imagine your taxable income as a bucket with progressive layers. The first layer barely gets taxed at 10 or 12%. The next layer sits at 22, then 24, 32, 35, and finally 37%. Each year, your salary fills those lower buckets. An inherited IRA distribution sits on top of your salary, stacking into whatever buckets are still empty, starting at your highest marginal rate. If you take a small distribution in a year when your income is low, maybe you retire, change jobs, or take a sabbatical, that money might only get hit at 12 or 22%. But wait until year 10 and cash out a $500,000 balance all at once, and almost every additional dollar lands in the 37% bucket. And don't forget state income tax. In California or New York, you can tack on another 10% or more. So suddenly, a tax rate you thought was 24% becomes nearly 50%. That's not hypothetical. It happens. So the winning move isn't to do nothing. It's to fill your tax bracket strategically each year. For example, if you are single and earning $100,000, the 24% bracket kicks in around $95,000. You could withdraw $10,000 this year without crossing into 32%. Next year, you pull $12,000. The year after, maybe 15. A steady, planned drip. Over the full 10 years, you could withdraw the entire balance without ever leaving the 24% bracket. The total tax would be maybe $120,000 on a $500,000 inheritance. But if you lump sum it at the end, and $300,000 of that lands in the top bracket, you'd pay over $200,000 in combined federal and state taxes. That's an $80,000 swing, created entirely by when you signed the withdrawal form. No exotic investment, no risky bet. Just good timing. But here is the twist that makes even smart people lose sleep. The IRS doesn't just watch your withdrawals. They also watch your non-withdrawals. Because if the original account owner died after their required beginning date, which for most parents means after age 73, you are legally obligated to take an annual required minimum distribution every single year in years 1 through 9. That RMD is calculated using a life expectancy table, and it's not optional. Many beneficiaries mistakenly believe they can take nothing in years 1 through 9, let the whole thing grow, and then empty it in year 10. If you do that, you'll not only pay the massive income tax on the lump sum, you'll also get hit with the 25% penalty for every year you skip the mandatory withdrawal. On a $400,000 IRA, skipping RMDs for 9 years could accumulate penalties north of $30,000. And the IRS is under no obligation to remind you. They'll just send the bill with interest. And here is where it gets worse. The penalty can't be waived with a polite letter unless you have a very specific and well-documented reasonable cause. Grief doesn't count. Being busy doesn't count. The IRS has a formal correction program. You must take the missed RMD immediately and file Form 5329, requesting a penalty abatement. Many tax preparers don't know how to do this correctly. If your request is denied, the penalty stands, plus interest, plus the tax on the withdrawal itself. So, a simple oversight in year 2 could dog your tax returns all the way to year 10. And if you are one of the thousands of beneficiaries who inherited an IRA between 2020 and 2023, the grace period is over. Every missed RMD from 2025 forward is now fully punishable. The trap is loaded again. Now, let me ask you something. Does it make sense so far? Because I want you to see how a rule that was supposed to simplify inheritance has turned into a multi-year tax negotiation. And we haven't even talked about the exceptions. The eligible designated beneficiaries who still get the stretch. If you are a spouse, a disabled person, or a chronically ill heir, different rules apply, and that's a conversation for another time. But for millions of adult children inheriting their parents' life savings, the 10-year countdown is non-negotiable. The only question is whether you'll treat it like a controlled burn or a wildfire. And the path you choose starts with a single decision: understanding your first required distribution, mapping your tax brackets for the next decade, and executing a strategy that trades impatience for precision. Because the moment you admit that the clock has already started is the moment you stop being the victim of the 10-year trap and start being its master. Next, I am going to walk you through exactly how to handle the entire process, step by step. What to do in the first 90 days, how to avoid the penalty, and the one document most heirs never file that can save them thousands. That's after this. Here is exactly what you do in the first 90 days after inheriting an IRA. First, locate the account and request a copy of the original owner's death certificate and the beneficiary designation form. You'll need both to open an inherited IRA in your name. The titling must be exact. Your name, as beneficiary of original owner's name IRA, or the custodian may treat it as a distribution, which triggers immediate taxation on the entire balance. This one paperwork mistake has already cost heirs thousands of dollars they didn't need to pay. Second, determine the required beginning date. If the original owner died after April 1st of the year following their 73rd birthday, you must take annual required minimum distributions in years 1 through 9. The deadline for your first RMD is December 31st of the year following death. If you inherit the account mid-year, that first RMD may already be due. Miss it, and the 25% penalty clock starts. Third, build a 10-year tax map. Take your estimated annual income and the current IRA balance, then project how much you can withdraw each year without bumping into the next bracket. A tax professional can run this simulation in about an hour. Pair that with the minimum RMDs, and you'll see exactly when to take small distributions and when to hold. The goal is to smooth the tax hit across as many low-rate years as possible. Now, the one document most heirs never file is IRS Form 5329, with a reasonable cause statement. If you already missed an RMD, you have exactly 2 years to file this form. Take the late distribution and request a penalty abatement. When done correctly, the IRS often reduces the penalty from 25% to 10%, or waives it entirely. The catch: you must attach a letter explaining why the mistake happened, a death, an illness, incorrect advice from a custodian, with supporting evidence. Without that letter, the abatement is almost never granted. And if you are beyond the 2-year window, the penalty becomes permanent. Let's see how the bracket game plays out with a real number. Remember our $500,000 IRA from earlier. If you are earning $100,000 a year and you spread the withdrawals evenly, you'll top out in the 24% bracket. Total federal tax, about $120,000. But if you wait and take the entire balance in year 10, more than half lands in the 35 and 37% brackets, and you'll pay nearly $200,000. Add state taxes, and the difference climbs past $90,000. That's not a penalty. That's your money voluntarily surrendered because of bad timing. The most surprising rule most heirs don't discover until it's too late is that even if you miss an RMD and the penalty is triggered, the IRS offers a correction window. You have 2 years from the missed year to withdraw the shortfall and file Form 5329. If you do that, the automatic 25% penalty rate drops to 10%. That's a 60% discount on the penalty, no questions asked, as long as you follow the procedure. Miss that 2-year window, and the full penalty becomes final, plus interest. So, the trap isn't just the 10-year countdown, it's the shorter, hidden clock on fixing your mistakes. So the choice is now yours. Will you treat the inherited IRA like a time bomb, or like a strategic asset that can fund your own retirement while keeping the IRS's share as small as possible? The answer starts with one action. Open that inherited account correctly, map your first RMD, and set a calendar reminder you can't ignore. The 10-year clock is already running, but the real money is made in the first 90 days. And if this video helped you see the trap before you stepped in it, there's one more thing I want you to have. This isn't just about your parents' IRA. We're standing at the front edge of the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in history, over $100 trillion moving from one generation to the next. And most of it is sitting in retirement accounts with a 10-year fuse. The difference between families who preserve that wealth and families who lose half to taxes will come down to a single skill: knowing the rules before you need them. The IRS isn't going to warn you. Your brokerage isn't going to call. This is one of those rare moments where 20 minutes of education can save you 6 figures. So if this made sense to you, hit the like button and subscribe. I want as many people as possible to see this before they learn the hard way. And if you are currently managing an inherited account, or think you might one day, I've put something together specifically for you. A free guide to handling inherited IRAs step by step. The link is in the first pinned comment below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.